welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking on a feeling that's, well, almost universally experienced, but honestly rarely understood. We're talking about that profound, often confusing sensation of emptiness, maybe hollowness, or just feeling untethered.
Yeah, and it's definitely more complex than just standard sadness or feeling tired. We've dug into analysis from experts writing in very well mind and psychology today to try and give you a real map of this feeling.
Right. Our goal here is to move past thinking emptiness is just, a bad sign or some kind of failure.
Exactly. We want to understand its diverse roots, physical, emotional, even existential, and crucially, figure out what we can actually do about it.
Okay, so before we jump into the causes, let's try and define it a bit more for you, the listener. Have you ever felt that kind of utter lack of connection? Like you're just watching your life happen, but nothing really connects you to the world around you?
That's really the core of the emotional emptiness the analysis describes. You feel hollow, like there's nothing inside of us, or maybe you're just going through the motions. What's fascinating here, I think, is the contrast with other intense negative emotions. Think about depression or panic or anger. They often feel really heavy, overwhelming.
Right, they sort of press down on you, crushing almost.
Exactly. But emptiness is often described as an uncomfortable lightness.
Uncomfortable lightness. That's interesting.
It's destabilizing, and it can stick around for days, weeks, even years. That idea really hits home because it suggests it isn't just a low mood. It's more like a kind of energetic detachment.
Like a sign that something's missing, not just that something bad is weighing you down.
Precisely. Something's absent, not just present and negative.
Okay, that distinction is incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
Let's unpack this then. We often assume this hollowness is purely emotional, right? But the research we looked at points to some really clear, measurable physical causes first.
Absolutely. And the foundational one, sleep deprivation.
Okay, simple, but maybe not so simple in practice.
Well, it sounds simple, but consistent quality sleep is just crucial for mental and emotional resilience. If you aren't recharging properly, your whole emotional framework gets vulnerable.
But everyone knows they need sleep. Does that really explain emptiness specifically? Not just, being grumpy or tired. What's the insight there?
Good question. The key insight is about resilience and cognitive control. An expert from Harvard noted that when you suffer chronic sleep deprivation, you basically set the stage for negative thinking and emotional vulnerability.
Oh, okay.
See, if your energy is constantly tanked, your brain's prefrontal cortex, that's the part handling complex emotions, filtering negativity, it just doesn't have the fuel to work properly.
So you're running on empty, literally.
Exactly. You become emotionally spent and much more prone to that feeling of being completely blank or empty.
Okay, that makes sense. So if our internal battery needs charging with sleep, then the next question is how we manage the energy we spend when we're awake.
Which points us straight to the second physical cause, exhaustion and burnout, the relentless pressure.
Yeah, the endless to-do list.
The source material gives these examples that are just intensely relatable. Think about being a caregiver for an aging parent.
Oh, yeah.
And you're doing that on top of a full-time job, maybe family life too. Your enthusiasm, your ability to feel joy, it just evaporates.
Or maybe you were really passionate about multiple projects at work, right?
Yeah.
But the constant pressure just leaves you feeling totally blah about everything. Your job, your life.
And the analysis highlights that research specifically backs this up. Informal caregiving often leads to intense stress and burnout.
So what's the takeaway? What do we do?
Well, this is where the action item comes in.
Yeah.
You have to honor your personal bandwidth.
Honor your bandwidth.
Yeah, those feelings of exhaustion and emptiness, they're like a big flashing stop sign. We're often told culturally that quitting or reducing responsibilities is weakness, right?
Totally, like you failed somehow.
But actually, it's an act of mental strength to acknowledge your limits.
Yeah.
It's necessary self-care, essential for your physical and mental well-being.
That is a really crucial reframing. Okay, so we've covered the physical foundations. Now let's move into where it gets maybe more intensely personal.
Right.
Emptiness often comes up from challenging emotional situations, and how we handle those situations really matters. So cause number 3, purposelessness and chronic boredom.
Yeah, that void gets created when you're just unsatisfied with daily life. We looked at input from Sherry Emmetenstein, a clinical social worker.
Okay.
And she notes that you often feel empty because you're just going through the motions and you don't really know what would give you meaning. It's like a slow erosion of your identity.
That sounds bleak. Is the solution just find your grand purpose overnight?
No, thankfully not. The experts suggest starting small, like really small. Make a list of activities that used to bring you joy or fun or a sense of meaning.
Things you've maybe let slide?
Exactly, things you've neglected. And then commit to adding just 1 or 2 back into your week. Seriously, just 1 or 2.
Right, manageable.
And this ties right into the proven power of gratitude, actually. If you're feeling that uncomfortable lightness, that emptiness, keeping a journal or even just using an app on your phone to note down one small happy thing each day can really provide perspective.
Does that really work?
Research consistently shows it does. Gratitude increases happiness and starts to fill those internal voids, basically by shifting your focus away from what's lacking towards what you do have.
Okay. That makes sense. Next up, we have to talk about connection. Or, maybe more pointedly, the devastating impact when it's absent. Loneliness and grief.
Huge drivers of hollowness.
Yeah.
Huge. Emptiness and numbness are incredibly common after a relationship ends, or obviously after a loved one dies. And we know connection is vital. It's not just nice to have.
Absolutely vital. You just think about that Harvard study of adult development.
Oh yeah, the really long one.
Yeah, running for over 75 years, following hundreds of lives, and the single most crucial factor they found for long-term happiness and health.
Loving relationships.
Maintaining loving relationships. Spouses, family, friends. It wasn't fame or fortune.
Nope. And if you flip that, loneliness is incredibly detrimental, physically and mentally. So when you lose that connection, whether through grief or isolation, that resulting emptiness is a massive signal of that loss.
And with grief specifically, it's not linear, is it?
Not at all. We need to be clear. Feeling numb or empty is a common, messy part of grieving. The stages aren't a checklist you tick off. You often cycle through numbness before you can even begin to process the deeper pain. It's okay to feel empty then.
Okay. That's important context. We also need to acknowledge the critical link between persistent emptiness and underlying mental health conditions.
Yes, definitely. When that feeling of nothingness just hangs around, persists, it can be a symptom of conditions beyond just temporary blues or grief. Depression is the classic example, right?
Leading to fatigue, lack of interest, that empty feeling.
Exactly. But it's also a hallmark feature of more complex issues.
Like you mentioned borderline personality disorder or BPD. How does the emptiness in BPD differ from, say, depressive emptiness?
That's a really key distinction. With BPD, the chronic emptiness is deeply tied to an unstable sense of self. It's less about just fatigue or lack of interest, and more about a core psychological structure that feels fundamentally void.
A void at the core.
Yeah, because someone with BPD often experiences intense mood swings, maybe an extreme fear of abandonment. This core emptiness sort of fuels that instability. It makes them feel untethered from their own identity.
Wow. Okay. And then there's the role of trauma.
Right. Emptiness can actually be a defense mechanism after a traumatic event.
A defense? How so?
Well, psychologically, it can sometimes feel easier or safer to just shut down and feel nothing, to kind of create emptiness rather than deal with the severe emotional pain that a trigger might bring up.
So the mind is trying to protect itself by creating a blank space.
In a way, yes, it's a coping strategy, even if it's ultimately not a healing one long term.
That's a really powerful and compassionate way to look at it. And it actually leads us perfectly into the biggest shift in this whole deep dive.
Okay.
The sources offer this counterintuitive idea that kind of flips the script. What if this feeling isn't a failure? What if it's not a symptom of something wrong with you, but actually a message?
This is the idea of emptiness as the messenger. Sometimes we might feel empty not because something is broken in us, but because something is fundamentally right, or at least fundamentally healthy in our internal system reacting to the outside.
Okay, explain that. How does that work?
Well, the idea is that our mind and body might be unconsciously refusing to connect with an environment that's, well, toxic.
Like a bad job, a draining relationship.
Exactly. Or just persistent isolation. If that environment is inconsistent with our true values, our purpose, our life goals, the emptiness is our system creating kind of clean slate. It's holding a space open, potentially, for something better.
Wow. I find that really profound. It's like a silent refusal to participate in the toxicity. You mentioned it ties into some Zen Buddhist ideas, like emptying our cup.
Yeah, exactly. The Zen concept is basically that if your cup is already full of preconceived notions, or maybe in this case, full of toxic input or obligations that drain you, then you can't receive anything new. No new knowledge, no genuine connection.
So the emptiness we feel might actually be the space opening up because we're refusing to be filled with the inauthentic or the harmful.
That's the perspective, yeah. It reframes hollowness not as a permanent problem, but as a potential opportunity for reevaluation, a signal that maybe what's filling the cup needs to change.
This shift in perspective apparently came up in a conversation with Ann Wilson from the band Heart.
Yes, according to the analysis we reviewed, she talked about viewing feelings of emptiness as a necessary pause. She was facing intense judgment, pressure. Her professional environment had become toxic.
Okay.
And by accepting that feeling of emptiness, she allowed herself to step back, recenter, and ultimately leave that situation to pursue projects that were actually aligned with her creative purpose.
So the void triggered constructive change.
Exactly. It wasn't the end point, it was the catalyst.
Okay. So if we embrace this idea, emptiness as a potentially potent messenger, signaling a need for change, what are the concrete next steps? What do we actually do?
Well, the experts seem to agree on a pretty clear 5-step path for coping. And this applies whether the feeling is temporary or maybe signaling a deeper, more structural change is needed.
All right, let's walk through them. Step 1 requires a fundamental shift in how we even engage with the feeling itself, right?
Right. Step 1 is accept rather than avoid. You have to acknowledge the feeling. Stop trying to distract yourself or numb yourself out.
Okay, easier said than done sometimes.
Oh, definitely. But the process involves maybe writing about it, but the critical part is focusing on the actual physical, somatic sensations of the emptiness.
Somatic sensations. What do you mean exactly? Like just a nervous stomach or...
More like the physical embodiment of the emotion. Where do you feel it? Is it in your chest? Does it feel like a heavy pressure there? Or maybe an actual absence? Does the feeling itself feel agitated or really slowed down? Where is it located? Head, heart, gut. The more you can just observe the physical experience, the actual body feelings, the less power it has. You get more comfortable with the experience, paradoxically.
That seems incredibly difficult, though, to just sit with something so uncomfortable.
It is hard, which is why step 2 builds right on this, moving towards understanding it. View the emptiness as that messenger we talked about.
Okay.
Take a developmental approach. Try to rate the story of this emptiness for yourself. Think about past losses, disappointments, maybe unfulfilling relationships or jobs.
Connect the dots backwards.
Yeah, find the narrative. The explanation you arrive at needs to feel authentic to you. That's what transforms emptiness from just this passive thing happening to you into a pathway toward understanding and maybe feeling more connected later.
Got it. So once we have the story, or at least the beginning of it, and we're observing the physical feeling, step 3 is the practical brainstorm. Consider coping strategies.
Right. Now you need a menu of potential tools. The sources suggest things like sustained exercise, engaging in creative processes, music, art, writing, whatever works for you, or maybe just scheduling deep, meaningful conversations with someone you trust.
Building that connection.
Exactly. Building connection or expressing yourself or moving your body. Different things work for different people.
Which leads straight to step 4. Experiment.
Precisely. You can't just look at the menu, you got to try the dishes, right? You test combinations. Maybe, for you, combining regular exercise, decent food, and good sleep is your reliable baseline.
Okay.
And then adding that connection piece, like a call with a friend on top of that, is the winning formula for you. The key is just continual self-assessment. What actually helps me feel less empty?
And noticing what doesn't work, too.
Absolutely. Trial and error.
Okay. And finally, step 5 is turning this into something sustainable. Develop a proactive lifestyle plan.
This is the big shift from just reacting to the emptiness when it hits to actively preventing it or lessening its impact. You take the strategies that worked best in your experiments.
Well, as you found in step 4.
Yep. And you turn them into consistent habits. You proactively seek out situations and activities that you know make you feel whole, or at least more connected.
And just as importantly,
you learn to recognize and maybe avoid situations that you can predict will cause that emptiness down the road. If you know deep down that too much isolation is a trigger for you, you proactively schedule that coffee date or that phone call. You manage your energy.
Wow. Okay. This has been,
Yeah.
well, a really necessary, layered, and I think ultimately empowering deep dive. So just to quickly summarize the key takeaways for you, our listener, emptiness, it's often tied to just overwhelming physical exhaustion. So you really need to address sleep deprivation and chronic burnout first.
Yeah, check the physical foundations. It's also, as we discussed, a very natural reaction to significant emotional challenges like grief or loneliness. Don't beat yourself up for feeling it then.
Right.
But crucially, we learn that sometimes this feeling is your internal system basically waving a flag, signaling that your environment, your job, a relationship, your social life might be toxic, and your mind is actually refusing to connect to it.
And acknowledging that feeling, whatever its source, is the first, strongest, and most critical step.
Absolutely. Don't ignore it.
And importantly, if this feeling is persistent, if it keeps coming back, if it feels really complex or overwhelming, the experts are unanimous on this one. Seeking professional help is necessary.
Please do. Talk to your doctor. Talk to a mental health provider. There's no shame in that. It's actually a sign of strength.
And if you or someone you know are struggling with thoughts of suicide, please contact the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. You can reach them by calling or texting 988.
Know that resources are available and you don't have to go through this alone. Help is there.
Okay, so if we accept this idea, just for a moment, that feeling empty can be a necessary space, maybe a refusal to connect to toxicity, then we have one essential final question for you to consider for yourself. What is the one thing in your current environment, your work, your relationships, your habits, that your emptiness might be trying to tell you to step away from?
Right.
What might it be asking you to make room for so something better can come in? That refusal, that empty space, maybe that's the very start of truly defining what makes you feel whole again.